Hi everyone and welcome back to Story of the World Highlights. Today we're going to be discussing Chapter 10. Chapter 10 introduces two different events. The first one was the War in the Pacific and the second one was the Suez Canal. So let's get started with the War in the Pacific. Now, the War in the Pacific takes place, as you guessed it, in the Pacific, but down south in South America. And in particular, it is in the region with Peru, Bolivia, and Chile. And that area in particular we're going to be focusing on is a desert, one of the driest deserts in the world, known as the Atacama Desert. Now, why was this an issue? Well, that desert was really dry and dead. Not even snakes could live there. So people weren't really arguing over it too much. Bolivia and Chile hadn't even decided on where the official border was inside the desert between their two countries. But then it was discovered that two very important resources were just below the sand. One was copper, and the other one was sodium nitrate, which could be used to make bombs. When Chile found out about this, it sent a group of miners to go and get that for Chile. Now, Bolivia saw this happening, and Bolivia said, hey, that desert's mine too. If you're going to be taking stuff from there to sell, you need to pay tax to me. And Chile said no and ignored them. And so Bolivia, pretty upset about this, decided to go in the middle of the night and steal all the Chilean miner materials that they had set up in the desert and then put them on sale at auction. And when Chile saw that they had stolen their stuff and were putting it on auction, Chile said, two can play at this game. And they went and captured the coastal city in Bolivia called Antofagasta. They captured that city, and that was the last straw for Bolivia. Bolivia said, this means war. And they started to fight. Now, here's something you should know. 6 years before this happened, Peru and Bolivia had signed a deal that said, if it ever should come to it and we need to fight against Chile, we will work together. Well, that time had come. And a thing in particular that was specific about this was that Bolivia, even though the main person fighting Chile, Bolivia didn't have any navy or ships or anything to have a sea battle. And so they had to rely on Peru to fight for them out at sea. You may be asked why they were fighting out at sea. Well, they couldn't fight in the desert. It was too dry, too barren. So they fought at sea. Now, Peru and Chile went to battle at sea, and unfortunately, Peru's ships, first one hit a coral reef and sunk. The other one was captured by Chile. So now that the sea battle had gone in the favor of Chile, they moved the next part of the battle to land. And in their land battle, it went into Peru. And Chile ended up capturing the capital city of Peru, Lima, and burned it to the ground. Now, this kept going on, the fighting, for 3 more years, but Peru eventually had to surrender, and they made a peace deal. The deal said that all of Bolivia's coastline, so touches the water, would be Chile's now. Bolivia would be a landlocked country. And then number 2 is the Atacama Desert would become Chile's altogether. Now, they didn't have any power to argue, so that was what happened. And after this war, the Peruvian people were deeply upset and unhappy. The country was in significant debt, and this even led to a civil war in Peru. Now, even today, even as recent as 2004, Bolivia still argues that part of the Atacama Desert should belong to it. That was the end of the first part of our chapter. Now we're going to move into the Suez Canal. So the Suez Canal, if you didn't know, is in Egypt. So looking back at our Egyptian history from what we've read already, we know that the Islamic Empire had come through the Persian area and the Middle East. And yes, it came to Egypt as well. And during that time in the Middle Ages, Egypt was ruled by the Islamic Empire. Eventually, in around 1500s, we have the Ottoman Empire taking control of Egypt, and it remained part of the Ottoman Empire for quite a long time. In 1805, the Ottoman Empire officially took over the throne of Egypt. And he put the leader, Muhammad Ali, who was a general, in charge of Egypt. And since he was in charge of Egypt, he decided to make himself the king of Egypt, since he had taken the throne. And he told everyone, the Sultan said I can be in charge. And the Sultan was too weak and too far away in the Ottoman Empire to really control Muhammad Ali very much. But he became the leader of Egypt, and Muhammad really wanted to make Egypt a lot like Europe. To do this, he decided to open a lot of universities and bring European professors to come teach at them. He also decided to expand Egypt by taking part of Sudan in the south. And he brought in French soldiers and military people to come and train the Egyptian army. Now, this improvements and move to be more like Europe did not end with him. His son, Said Pasha, went ahead and said, I want to make this place something that makes Europe love us and marvel at us. So I am going to build a canal. A canal is a passageway for a boat to go through. It's a man-made passageway. And so he decided to build the Suez Canal. And this did amaze Europeans because, remember, for trade, they would have to go all the way around the base of Africa to get to the east. But if the Suez Canal was built, it would be a big shortcut. So that was his decision, and Europe was very intrigued. However, it took 10 years to build, a really long time. And by that point, Said's son, Ismail Pasha, became the leader of Egypt, and he wanted to continue making Egypt something for Europe to marvel at, just like his father and grandfather. So he was spending money on universities. He was expanding territory. He was trying to build up infrastructure like roads and bridges and things and make Egypt awesome. However, he was spending way more money than he actually had. And he had to borrow a lot of money from France and Britain. And he wasn't able to pay back all this money. So he had to give control of the Suez Canal to Britain as part of the payment that he owed them. And France and Britain were so frustrated that their money wasn't getting paid back that they demanded that the Ottoman Empire remove Ismail Pasha from the throne and allow France and Britain control of the Egyptian treasury. Treasury is the government department that guards the money. Now, with this, they made a new person the leader. They made Ismail's son the leader of Egypt, but he wasn't really the leader. He was just somebody that was controlled by the British. And in this, eventually, the British started to take control of the army, and the army of Egypt didn't like that and tried to fight back. And then we have Britain taking over the capital of Egypt, and Egypt becoming essentially a British territory. That is the end of chapter 10. I'll see you next time for Story of the World highlights. Bye-bye.